Hi, welcome back to the Meme Team podcast. This week I'm welcoming Sophie Vershbow, a freelance journalist whose work you've seen in the New York Times, New York Magazine, and Esquire. She spent 6 years doing social media for Random House. This week we're going to talk about politicians running creator playbooks and winning, OpenAI buying a podcast, and Ronan Farrow dropping one of the biggest tech profiles in years. Welcome, Sophie.
Thanks. Hi. Excited to be here.
Awesome. Okay, I want to talk about competency porn and hot Democrats, the new political content playbook for the new elections. So part of what we're seeing here is how much success Zohran Mamdani is having as New York mayor, all the videos that he was doing. One of the moments that went viral was talking to street vendors about like the regulations that they face, basically showing the inside view of like how the policies that exist already affect the people that are on there and how much, the rest of us, the public, don't really know what's happening. And then now that he's in office, we're seeing that he's keeping that up, right? He's keeping up videos about the subway and like what they're doing to like fix there. But one of the things that he's recently been doing a lot of is fixing potholes. I just saw that he crossed putting 100,000 or fixing 100,000 potholes, and he made that a whole like video. It's he did another series about shoveling snow, of how like they were getting people that live in New York paid to come out and shovel snow to make sure that it was cleared up. And it was just this like stark view of like realizing that like, wow, our politicians can actually A, be doing stuff, but then B, telling us about it. And I think for me, what it made me realize is how much we don't see the rest of the mayors, really talking about that. We are starting to see some of the presidential candidates come out with that just because they're gearing up for running for president in, 2028. The other thing here is there was an article that came out, this whole idea of like getting hot Democrats to run for office. And we're seeing that with a bunch of, obviously Mamdani's counted amongst those. We also have AOC. We have Graham Platner, who's the Marine running in Maine Senate. Sam Forsag, the smoke jumper in Montana. Bob Brooks, a firefighter and union president for Pennsylvania. John Ossoff and Gavin Newsom. That may or may not hit for some people, but point is, he still falls in like the attractive, candidates. We also wanted to talk about this because David Plouffe, the campaign strategist for Obama, wrote an article yesterday saying that like the new content playbook for anybody that's running for office is focusing on these creator, playbooks, which is being forward-facing on video. And it's funny because we've talked about that here, right? We talked about why Zohran Mamdani has started doing so well. And a lot of that is because of that forward-facing video, right? At the time, I was saying that when he's campaigning against Andrew Cuomo's like, very stilted, very robotic when he comes out on camera. And it's funny because he started to change his strategy right after they started seeing that Mamdani was doing so well, but it just never quite worked for him. At the time, we compared it to JFK versus Nixon, where it's like JFK was like the TV president and then Nixon was just like sweaty and gross on TV. And so now we had like Mamdani being the TikTok president, right? Where he could, be on camera and it just looked more natural and easy for him. But Sophie, would love to hear from you because you live in New York and Mamdani is your mayor and your dog is also the NYC mayor. So I'm sure you...
My dog is the dog mayor of New York, which is for most people who do not know, an officially elected position. Zohran did attend Simon's inauguration, which was very exciting for us.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think when I think back to Eric Adams, our last mayor, and what his social media content was, it was fake videos throughout his day being like 11 a.m. protein shake, 12 p.m. in my private car, like 1 p.m. secret meeting. It didn't tell you anything about what he does. And so I think that Zoran's been really smart. He's really approached this from like a no problem too big, no problem too small, and realized that it's probably easier to show us a lot of the small stuff day to day alongside those big, universal pre-K announcements. And so, yeah, I mean, we see other politicians just doing this all the time now, trying to, remake that Mamdani style, and I think that we see it all the time. Like, for some people it works and for some people it doesn't, and I think a lot of it comes down to how authentically those people are saying their message. But yeah, it really
Mhm.
helps when you're dealing with someone who's, I think Mamdani's 34. Yeah. I will say, Zoran has a unique ability to stay on message. He was asked
Mhm.
yesterday about the summer house scandal, which is another
Mhm.
thing, we could have talked about.
Yep.
And he was on message as saying, oh, I don't really know about this, but I think Sierra's a nurse. And so I
Mm.
support Sierra, for helping the people in the city. It's like
Yeah,
he's
yeah, yeah.
so disciplined even when he's getting in on the pop culture, and I think that's really his unique ability to do this is he's
Mhm.
not making memes that are just trying to be funny. He's using the
Yeah.
style to the best of the ability, but delivering real information on real things he's
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things when he went on the podcast with, what is it, Andrew Schultz, and
Mhm.
they're talking about, yes, political things, but then he's also able to banter with the guys and talk about
Yeah.
sports and talk about pop culture. And I saw this yesterday because, there's a bunch of commentary about the David Plouffe article about whether we want politicians to only be able to talk about politics, right? And they're saying we need to get them on like the Bill Simmons podcast, talking about like pop culture and sports and stuff. And then someone's like, well, I don't want my politicians to be able to talk about like, sports. I want them to be able to talk about politics. And it's like, okay, but you're already in the political world paying attention to politics. Most people, most
Right.
men are not paying attention to politics and don't want that, right? They want to be able to just banter with you. That's why one of those, one of the most famous questions that always gets asked about a presidential candidate is, would you have a beer with him? It's not
Yes,
because, it's not because
exactly.
they want to talk politics with him. They want to bro out with him. And I think that's what we're seeing
Yeah.
with all these, political podcasts, the Joe Rogan show, the
Yep.
Theo Vaughn, the Andrew Schultz, all those. None of them have most of the, top political candidates on there. And maybe it's because most of them can't talk beyond anything that's like interesting to people, right? I think that's like a huge thing that people need to know about like podcasts. It's like you're on there to talk about stuff that the audience wants to listen to. And yes, you can talk about some of it, but you got to be able to talk about more than just like a political message.
Yeah, and we've seen so many of these politicians. I mean, Kamala went on, I think, Call Her Daddy, if I'm remembering correctly. But it was
Yeah.
like a whole thing like, is she going to go on Joe Rogan? And then she
Yeah, yeah.
didn't. That we Yes, a lot of us are very in the political news every day, but most
Mhm.
people aren't, and most people are
Mhm.
not voting based on policy decisions. And
Yeah.
so I think especially, Zoran came in, like, I can't express enough that no one knew who this guy was.
Mhm.
Like, no one. And the
Mhm. Mhm.
fact that he won over Andrew Cuomo, like,
Yeah.
it's because he reached people who wouldn't otherwise have voted. It's because people understood that there was an election. It was because he
Mhm.
approached it from all these sides. To me, it's like, do you need a digital video strategy like Zoran? Like, of course you do. It's not about Zoran. It's about the fact that it's
Mhm.
2026 and this is how you reach people now.
Mhm.
To me, it's the same thing people will say, like, could you put like book talk back in the bag? And it's like, well, not everyone's sitting around reading the New York Times book review.
I
And
know.
like, we have to reach people. Like, these are not genies we're putting back in the bag after
Yeah.
one candidate. People have to learn how to do it multiple ways. That's how you win an election now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But to, go back to the hot Dems,
Yeah.
maybe we just skip the step of like, them being like good on policy and we just go straight to like they're attractive on camera and like people want to look at them, right? And then trying to teach those people how to speak, policy. But then also I think it just speaks to a lot of where many voters are, where it's like, yes, I care about policy, but like really diving deep into like, what each thing means or like how it's going to
Mhm.
affect me just gets harder and harder when like nothing actually seems to be moving forward, you know? And I think the thing
Totally.
with Mamdani has been that like he's like, okay, let's fix the potholes. That's like a very, very visible thing that like we can fix right now. The
Mhm.
snow thing was another thing where it's like it's very visible. People feel it in their day-to-day lives. Let's get them trusting us on these things. and then maybe we can start doing like some of the bigger things. But he's also been, like you mentioned the pre-K, universal
Mhm.
pre-K, a policy that he just, also
Well, we'll give
puts.
credit to De Blasio for that
Mhm,
one,
mhm.
but he
Yeah.
just expanded it significantly. I mean, he
Yeah,
fixed
yeah.
a bridge ramp onto the Brooklyn
Mhm, mhm,
Bridge his first day in office, I
mhm.
believe. So it was like coming in right away, like, "See, look, we can get little things done."
Yeah.
And I think too, like, those quality of life things are so important and
Mhm,
makes people feel like something's actually happening in their city. I think another big one is like scaffolding. That's like a big one that he's trying to get done. It's so visible. Like take care
mhm,
of some of these things that people see in their everyday life. But it's not I mean his digital strategy too, going back to the to childcare,
mhm,
is that he is using other digital things. Like if you walk around the city, there's digital billboards where it like tells
mhm.
you how to sign up for universal childcare. It's like all over videos. So like they're
That's
saying
right.
the enrollment itself is up. And so this stuff
Yeah,
isn't
yeah.
just like his approval rating, it's enrollment in the programs. We saw
Mhm,
how many applications they got for people who wanted to work there. Like he's
mhm,
using this digital strategy for everything.
mhm.
And I think we're seeing how that trickles down in more ways than just votes.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I think was announced yesterday or today was that the murder rate is down,
Exactly.
you know? And
Crime
it's
is
like
down. Yeah.
exactly, and it's just like, people talk about how unsafe New York is and whether
Yeah.
you'd allow your kid to go on the subway, and it's like,
Ridiculous.
the realization of most people's day-to-day life is that they go on the subway every day and they use it.
Yes.
So it's that thing where it's like we're seeing this competency porn become a relevant strategy because it gets people believing that the government can do and will fix the things that are affecting your day-to-day life. And if they can do the small stuff, then maybe I will trust them to do the bigger stuff, the bigger policies
Yes.
that he wants to do. I mean, speaking as someone in LA and California, I'm jealous of New York because it's like
Yeah.
we're seeing that. We're
Yeah.
seeing actual action coming from your politicians. Whereas, here, I mean, we have the mayoral race happening here right
Mhm.
now. And I barely hear from them. I mean, I see Nithya Raman, not really seeing Karen Bass come out and like talk about
Yeah.
much of anything, or she's doing more of like the press conferences. Also, Zoran Mamdani does do that, right? Like he does come out and
He
he
does
does those
all of
press
it. Yeah.
conferences, but then he'll go and shoot like 30 to 60-second video
Mhm.
on the subway. And I think like that's the huge like discrepancy there, where it's like he can do all forms of like the digital strategy, and it's not just he's comfortable with one. And I think we're going to start seeing more of that. Even, I mean, I'm starting to see that more with like our governor races here in California, because we're also going to
A
vote
lot
for
of that
that
comes
person as
down.
well.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes down, I think, to age as well. I mean, a lot
Hmm.
has been made of like, look, the guy looks tired. Like
Yeah.
he seems to be going at every minute of the day to every event.
Uh-huh.
I mean, people are online posting videos of him like biking around the
Hmm.
city. Like he just fasted for Ramadan. I don't know if he
Hmm.
sleeps. Like
Yeah.
I'm very worried as like a, mental Jewish mother about his like, sleep schedule, but I
Yeah.
think it really shows in how fast he can do these videos and how many he can put out. I mean, I remember seeing someone post, like, what is this guy doing? Like, filming these videos. He should be back at work. And someone on his team replied, like, it took him literally 10 minutes. Like,
Yeah.
you get him in, you get him out. He knows how to film a video. So I think you really see it.
But I think that's also the thing, right? Like, this is one of my lessons, is that that is the job now. The job
Yeah.
includes making these videos and making this type of content so that you can find, voters and, your inhabitants wherever they are. And that
Yeah.
includes having a TikTok strategy, having a YouTube strategy, having a newsletter strategy, having a press conference strategy. He calls into shows as well. I think he learned that one from Trump, right? Like where
Yeah.
he'll call into like New York stations and talk to them, or he'll show up. I mean, he showed up at the it wasn't Colbert, it was Fallon. He showed up the
Mhm.
Fallon, show to like drop in for like, I think it was like 3 minutes. He was in at the top of the show and then he was out. And I think that's where, the thing that we have to, realize going forward. And I think for marketers going forward is that digital is part of the strategy, and
Mhm.
especially video. I feel like so many, companies, startups, marketers, still aren't going into video because they're like, "Oh, that's a whole different strategy. I have to learn a whole new thing." I mean, I felt that before I started doing the podcast, and now I've started getting a little bit more comfortable being in front of the
Mhm.
camera, and like video editing and doing all that. Um, because that's where you're finding people having, going on TikTok, going on Reels, having,
Mhm.
YouTube, put your video in front of like users. Like the majority of users are watching, portrait size videos, right? And like we need to be where they're at, especially if we want them to vote for us or to buy our
Mhm.
product or to,
Yeah.
buy our service. So, go where the people are. And that now includes being on TikTok and being on video.
Mhm. Agreed. Yeah. I completely second that. I think it's just, like I said, this is not like an option now. It's not
Mhm.
like you get to do one or the other. It's not like you're a digital candidate or you're not. Remember when Obama was the Facebook candidate? Like
Yeah.
this is not a thing we should talk about anymore. It like is what it is. You
Yeah.
need to promote yourself in those ways in the same way that you need to reach people who would never be caught dead on TikTok.
Yeah, definitely. And then one other lesson there is this whole idea of competency porn. People want to see what you're doing and have it be explained to them in a way that they understand. I think we're
Yeah.
seeing that a lot of that right now with the Artemis 2,
Mhm.
launch, and the video of like the astronauts actually talking to you and talking through their process, what they're thinking, what they're doing, what they're seeing in a way that's like understandable to us, and like you're not talking down to us like it's not that I mean, we're far less knowledgeable
An
and intelligent
astronaut.
than these
Yeah. Ah,
astronauts, but
I'll
like
take
I
that.
don't feel like they're talking down to me.
I was gonna say too, like I know a lot of people have written really intelligently about this with a show like The Pit, where it's like we
Mhm.
are just desperate to watch people do their job and do it
Mhm.
well and get
Yeah.
something done. We live in a really chaotic world right
Yeah.
now. And so I think just the people who are centering us and making us feel like
Yeah.
there are little accomplishments and things we can hold on to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, so this is advice to those marketers that like work in spaces that are doing really cool shit, especially like
Mhm.
hard tech and like manufacturing, construction, health tech. Like what are these things that you're doing that regular people, that aren't in
Yeah.
your industry can understand like what you're doing. Like talk to those things and educate us on like how you're doing it and why it matters and why it's making a difference.
Yeah, I think a really good example of that actually would be, and I need to look into this more, but I've seen Eli Lilly, the medical
Mm,
company,
yeah.
just everywhere recently
Mm-hmm.
in advertising.
Interesting.
So like they were the
Uh-huh.
main sponsor of the New Yorker Festival when I went last October. I've seen
Uh-huh.
their ads like before movies I've been going to see. And their stuff
Interesting.
is really around like this is what we're doing to
Mhm.
improve healthcare outcomes.
Yeah.
This is the research we're doing. I'm not making any judgment on the advertising or the
Yeah.
validity of it or them as a healthcare company, but
Yeah.
I've found it really interesting how much they've been like trying to put it out to the people in really digestible
Mhm.
terms. And, it's something as confusing as a healthcare company and the new technology to be like, look, we're doing something, think positively of us.
Okay. Awesome.
We are kind of at a tipping point a little bit
Mhm.
in book world. So the New York Times Book Review cut ties with a freelance reviewer named Alex Preston after they discovered that he used AI in his book review in the New York Times. And it was found that he really heavily pulled from another review in The Guardian, who also are the ones who broke this story. I'm sure that was very flagged by their systems. And so they have completely cut ties with him. He apologized very adamantly. I will read his quote from a newsletter interview he did. He said, "The short version is that I had written a draft review of the book, but it was under length and I was rushing badly and drowning slightly. I made the stupid decision to use an AI tool to help expand and smooth it with instructions about US spelling and house style at the New York Times, which I always get wrong." Okay. So I have a lot of thoughts about that. So I am a freelance books writer. I have never been fortunate enough to write a review for the New York Times. I also don't typically do a lot of straight reviews, but that's not the point. For anyone who doesn't know, the New York Times Book Review is basically like the best thing you could hope for your book. Getting like a rave review is like a dream bucket list thing for most authors. And for most writers, getting to write for the New York Times Book Review is sort of like a pinnacle of your book writing career. And so to see someone who could not write 1,000 words, that's what it was. He couldn't get to 1,000 words. That's like not even, it's like 2 pages.
Mm.
You are doing this for the prestige, for like love of the game. And so to see someone using AI for that, I think is just like really, really soul crushing. So that is coming on the heels of the Shy Girl scandal. And then Curtis Brown Literary Agency, who's one of the big literary agencies, voiced concern that editors at publishing houses are essentially putting manuscripts that Curtis Brown submits to them and putting them into ChatGPT or other AI programs and summarizing them, making decisions based on them. We don't really know all the details, but regardless, putting confidential, not yet published information into these LLMs, which could then, in theory, impact future deals because of all the said reasons. All of these things are happening at once. You sort of have one on the agency side, one on the review journalism side, one on the publisher side. I really think when it comes to books, to publishing, to literary merit and how we talk about them and the publications we hold up to esteem, it's like simply we have to be better. We have to say that is not how we operate. We are going to take the time and the energy because we are the community that understands the value. And so it's kind of heartbreaking to me to see that editors, looking at submissions or an author getting a big book deal or a reviewer getting a dream reviewing gig are squandering those to use AI when there's so many people who would gladly do it and are talented and could do it without AI.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. I'll also throw in that I saw that somebody got flagged as being AI, and they're like, the only reason that that would happen is if Google Docs was feeding into, ChatGPT or one of these AI services. And they're like, I no longer, write anything on Google Docs because I don't trust the system anymore. As you're talking about this process of like Curtis Brown saying that like some of the publishing houses are uploading the documents to ChatGPT, they get put into ChatGPT as a system. And who's to say that they won't later get flagged as being written by AI, right? I'm sure we're going to start seeing, I think, people get caught up in,
A
AI
lot.
scandals that maybe didn't even use
Totally.
AI, but like they're getting caught up in it because other people are getting caught up in it. I do think there needs to be a separation between like stuff that goes on social media and like whatever, like who cares? But like books and like actual art from like people, I would like that to be, handmade, handwritten by
Yeah.
people or typed out, whatever.
It's like a smoothing over of
Mhm.
everything in life. I mean,
Yeah,
there was that amazing New Yorker article about friction maxing or
right.
whatever. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like kind of again the point. Like, all right, you want to smooth out all the marketing copy, go knock your socks off. But like,
Mhm.
not everything should be the same. Not everything
Yeah,
is supposed to sound the same. I always think
yeah,
about people who are like, you could read a summary of this book in 3 minutes. Why
I
would you read
know.
the book? And it's like, okay, so actually, that's not the point.
Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah,
point
yeah.
of this is not the fastest generation to a story.
Yeah.
And so it's like, that's why I find it so frustrating because I think these people all understand that intellectually. And so it really just comes off to me as cheating.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, and that's basically what it comes down to, right? Where it's like, oh, and it wasn't me, it was my editor. It wasn't me, it's the junior, like,
Well,
employee that's not
yeah.
doing it, right? And it's like, okay, but that's coming down from the top, right? There are decisions being made that like are allowing for this to happen, right? And I think like one of the things here that like, is concerning is that like if we say that authors have to like write the book, but then they get caught up because their literary agent or their publisher, uses the
It's a
AI to do
nightmare.
something for their book, then like who gets blamed for that, right? Because for the Shy Girl Hatchet scandal, like the biggest thing that I saw there was like, okay, but Hatchet like at no point questioned any of this, like whether it was like
And
AI
they should be
written.
embarrassed about it. They
Right.
really should. I think it's unacceptable. And like, look, I will say, like, editors are wildly underpaid for the most part,
Mhm, mhm.
overworked, and, like, that is all true. It's
Right.
still not to me, what's so confusing is this was a self-published book, and from I have not read it, I have no plans to read it, but from the passages I've seen, it does
Yeah.
not look like it was written well, and so why did Hachette not say, "We understand it's already popular as a self-published title, but in order to be popular, we need it to be a little bit higher standard."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I I push back on yeah, I push back on the needed to be a higher quality because E.L. James, who wrote the 50 Shades series,
No, I
and Colleen
know.
Hoover, who writes all those books, those are not very well written.
No, I know,
um,
but I think it's like that
so
really like stilted AI. Like, why were they not reading
yeah,
it and being like, I guess higher quality was the wrong way to put it. Like, why had they
yeah,
not read it and been like, something needs to be changed in this? Like,
yeah,
something's off. Because I
yeah,
can't
yeah.
explain to you, like, when you work at a publisher, like, a lot of people read the book. Like, this was a
Mm,
buzzy book. Like, a lot of people would have read this. So I'm
yeah.
really confused about how this gets this far without
See, and
anything.
that's the biggest thing I was thinking. So it's good to know that it is confirmed from somebody who has worked in a publishing house that it does go through levels. Because I mean, I think we
I
see
don't
that
think
even
so.
with like AI scandals in like the tech world. I mean, we're seeing right now a tech scandal with this company called Delve who does like compliance stuff, right? And they were like a YC darling, and then they were just removed from like the YC like website. And then the Delve founders came out and put a video saying that they're seeing the things, they're changing their process, nothing alluding to like the actual allegations of what they did and like any of that. But the point is that like nowhere along the way have any of the investors of Delve come out to say, oh, we got this wrong, or maybe the system that we're creating is pushing them to have to
In what world? Yeah.
do these come up with these fake numbers and like say that they're being compliant in order to
Yeah.
reach the like the milestones that you want for a VC funded company, right? And I
Mhm.
think a similar thing can be said about like, the publishing industry where it's like you want to get those big buzzy books that like you already know have an audience,
Mhm.
bring them in house, and then just like publish them without putting them through the stringent process that you do all the other
Totally.
books that you have to do. But then also you're getting more books than ever and you have to edit them, you have to do all this stuff, and you're trying to cut back on the number of people that you're hiring to do the work, so
Yep.
you use AI to help you do it, not realizing that you're just tainting the entire system, because where does the trust go if they can't trust that the big publishing houses that are supposed to be have the integrity and have the like eliteness, right? Because this is the thing
Preach.
that you would
Yes. Like,
you would have
yes.
the eliteness to be like, no, we do not fuck with AI because that ruins the entire system for us included.
Yes.
And then, you're using it yourself to cut back on like your time and not have to hire actual humans to do the work. It's funny because it's like the people in publishing had to know this because their audience would be some of the most anti-AI usage people out there. If there's like a circle of like, people
Yep.
to not use AI and people that read books, those are pretty much going to overlap. So it's very surprising that they thought that they could kind of just sneaky, do it on
That's
the down
yeah.
low.
Uh, I think this is the tip of the iceberg. I think we're gonna see ones that are less obvious than the New York Times Book Review Guardian one,
Mhm,
where it was someone being like, it was just so obvious. This
mhm.
was like a direct thing. And I'm curious about the more subtle ones where people are gonna really need to sort of like explain writing style. I saw someone yesterday on Twitter say that the Oxford comma is a tell of AI. And I
Oh
was
yeah.
just like,
Mhm.
you can take it from my cold dead hands. Like,
Yeah,
this is for
yeah.
clarity. Like,
Yeah,
what are you
yeah, yeah.
talking about?
I mean, they took the M dash from us, so
They did not take the M dash from me.
yeah, right. Any proper grammar or writing styles are pretty much gonna become the tell. I've been talking to other marketers and they're like, "I leave in typos now in my tweets and social media posts to show that there's a real human behind, these posts." Or I saw another one that said that I no longer use capitalization because that's another tell that like, AI is, writing proper sentences.
to bring it around to the point for marketers, which is that I think people are really hungry for things that feel human made. So I work in social, running a social media team, and I talk about this a lot. Our stuff has
Mhm.
to feel like it comes from people. Apple just put out a big ad where they like made it shooting through the glass. And, a lot of it's lip service. Like it's Apple. They have plenty of
Mhm.
AI, but I think we're
Mhm.
going to really see things made by humans like held up to this higher
Mhm.
standard. And so I see it across social all the time. Teams will put, if something looks almost too unreal, I'll now
Mhm.
see it in the caption, like, this was
Yeah.
made by our social team. People
Mhm.
want you to know that it's not AI. And so I think looking for those opportunities to make things that feel very tactile and person led and human made, and to make that not just, oh, it's not, marketing copy written by AI, where sometimes that's like, who can even tell, I sound like AI sometimes when I write that stuff. But, but what are these moments where you can really see it and feel that? And so I feel like I'm hoping that industries like publishing are going to hold themselves up and really,
Yeah.
make that super purposeful. But I think that the lesson absolutely applies outside of book world.
Mhm. There are elite industries and like luxury industries that can't use AI the way that, companies that don't care, can, right? And I'm seeing that now as like Hollywood, right? Like we just had that, huge battle with, Project Hail Mary and like the whole idea of like them doing visual effects and using a puppet instead of using CGI and
They like film things in light boxes,
right, exactly.
like
So that where it's like they're filming the actual thing instead of
practical
using CGI.
effects is what it's
Practical
called.
effects. There
Yes.
you go.
No, it's amazing.
Thank you. No, no, no. Totally. So seeing, those like movies do so well, right? Because people are like, yes, I want to see art and I want to see
Mhm.
like, handmade human craft and how that all comes together to show me these gorgeous, beautiful shots. We're creating these things based off the ideas that humans have. And that's where it's like AI can't do that, Like,
Yeah.
how is AI going to translate human vision into actual practical effects, right? And I think that that's the separation that so we have movies, we have publishing now where it's like,
Mhm.
I want humans to be writing these books.
Yeah.
We have fashion, we saw the huge like backlash against Gucci where it's
Ooh,
like, okay, if you're going to be a luxury brand that's charging luxury prices, then you better be fucking making things, right? Like Sheen, yes, go ahead, use AI because you're AI slop anyway,
sure.
right? So that's a thing where it's like you as a company have to think about, do we want to be on the side of like human
Mhm.
made, like human creation, storytelling, craft, or are we okay with being associated with AI and AI
Mhm.
slop and lower
Yeah.
prices and lower like barriers to entry?
It's a
That's the
branding
thing.
choice,
Yeah.
really.
Mhm. Yeah, 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 for sure. So figure that out. And then also, we were talking about this last week because I do feel that like marketers are kind of like on the front lines of that, where
Mhm.
you're the ones that are going to get, the commentary from your audience because you're on social media, you're hearing the surveys, and so you have to be able to go up to, leadership and tell them, hey, this is probably going to,
Yeah,
bring us backlash that like people are not going to accept us and then speak to the numbers. And then now you have a whole bunch of cases, case studies, showing the
definitely,
backlash. So keep all these examples in your back pocket to bring it up to leadership to be like, hey, maybe we shouldn't go about it this way.
definitely.
Okay. Speaking of AI,
Yes.
yes. So OpenAI bought TBPN last week. And yesterday the Ronan Farrow profile came out about Sam Altman. And I think the biggest thing here that I just, want to talk about is like how I think it's like two sides of the same coin, right?
Mhm.
So last week, TBPN, so that's a technology business programming network, hosted by Jordy Hayes and John Coogan, the like Silicon Valley, tech darlings and like, podcast bros, basically. They got bought by OpenAI. And I think the biggest question of everybody's mind was, wait, why? TBPN is winding down their ad business. OpenAI is still promising editorial independence. Whether or not that's actually going to be the case, we'll see. Though I think they had a very big example come to light yesterday with the Ronan Farrow profile talking about Sam Altman, who is the CEO. And, I think that they had, prior to actually, is that? Okay, I'm just realizing that maybe the timing is not, it makes a little bit more sense. So,
Mhm.
obviously Sam Altman had to know that this profile from the New Yorker was gonna come out because Ronan Farrow probably reached out to him to confirm, much of the story or get like, a commentary. So the fact that they bought it last week before TBPN could actually talk about it on their show makes it kind of questionable whether they'll actually be able to keep some of that editorial independence that,
Mhm.
OpenAI is saying that they will get. The thing that like, is standing out to me, two sides of the same coin, is that OpenAI wants to have megaphone that they currently don't have. We did talk about their misstep when the whole Anthropic versus AI thing happened around Super Bowl, where the CMO Kate Rauch and Sam Altman both came out with their very lengthy, rebuttals of Anthropic, basically parodying, OpenAI and saying that, ads are coming to like OpenAI, but not to Anthropic,
Mhm.
right? And I think they like realize people already think
Mhm.
of them as like the villain. And then when John Coogan came out with like an editorial piece talking about how tech and AI need to have better stories and a better narrative about like what we're saying, that like saying that AI is coming to steal your jobs is not a winning argument. Who would have thought, right? I think it showed Sam Altman and, OpenAI that like if you want to tell good stories, maybe we should go to the two guys that are like have taken Silicon Valley by storm, and they've been profiled in like the Wall Street Journal and like the New York Times, and have them talk about tech and AI in a
Mhm.
way that gets people on our side. The other thing is to realize that the TBPN boys are not journalists. They're not there to have gotcha questions of all like, the CEOs and founders that are coming onto their show. And we're seeing this as well. The LA Material just came out with an article yesterday saying that celebrity podcasts have become the go-to,
Saw that.
outlet for celebrities. And
Yeah.
the reason why is because like it's a safe space for them to go shoot the shit, basically, show that they're human, but then also not get any of the uncomfortable questions that they would get if an actual journalist had to talk to them about things, right?
Article talked a lot about cutting, and that's, like, a big
Mhm.
thing when you're a journalist, you can't just say,
Yeah.
"Oh, wait, no, that was actually off the record."
Yeah.
But when you're I don't think Amy Poehler, who and I love her podcast,
Yeah.
no shade to Amy Poehler, but I don't think when you're Amy Poehler, your goal is, like, a gotcha. People wanna hear
Yeah.
you have a nice conversation because you're Amy Poehler, and so it's
Mhm.
so much less pressure, especially for celebrities, I feel like, who don't typically do a lot of press.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, we saw I mean, one of the ones that stands out was the, Aubrey Plaza, interview that she did
Yeah,
where she's talking about, the death of, like, her husband. She never would have had that conversation with a journalist,
yeah,
A, but then B, there was nothing there that would have been uncomfortable for her to actually have to answer. And I've talked about this too with, what is it? The Heights podcast with Travis and
mhm,
Jason Kelsey, right? Where it's like all of a sudden that's become a go-to place for celebrities to go on there. I mean, we saw Leonardo DiCaprio do his first ever podcast on the Heights
yeah,
podcast. When that came out, it's the most insight into Leonardo DiCaprio that most of us had gotten, right? Like
yeah,
where it's like he's talking about the directors that he's worked with and like what he talked, him, what he has to do to like get into the, mindset of, being an actor on like the various films. And then, Ryan Gosling was also on the podcast, right? Where it's like
mhm,
you had him, talking about I mean they made the funny joke about him playing what's like the football player in Remember the Titans, right?
mhm.
Where it's like you're able to have these like, also like in-depth conversations about different topics that probably wouldn't happen when a journalist is trying to do it because a journalist is trying to get information about specific things. So I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing. But then also we shouldn't put journalistic like principles onto these people and expect them to do that job, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think the OpenAI acquisition is very interesting. I feel like
Mhm.
I've been seeing so much about public opinion about AI being, sort of like at this all-time low,
Yeah.
and all these data centers being canceled and everything. And so I think it's interesting that they made this major media acquisition on something so like inside the world,
Yeah.
so inside baseball for tech. Um,
Yes, it's very inside baseball to tech, but also within tech, especially because of all the layoffs that are going on of like I mean, we just saw Oracle and
mhm.
Amazon both lay off like thousands of people last
Yeah,
week, right? And what's the main reason? Because of AI, right? So it's like even within tech worlds, like we are getting these stories of AI coming for your jobs. And then you see the
totally.
layoffs. So it's like that bad storytelling and narrative is still happening within tech circles. So I think what they're trying to do is like we need to get tech people on our side and then maybe we can go outside of that. And obviously, I mean, they will try to do that. They are obviously going to try to expand their audience and like go outside of just tech world. But I think that they feel like let's start with tech because they're already semi-friendly to us. They already know these guys.
Mhm.
Though apparently not everybody, because people in New York don't really know, even that
Yeah,
work in
I was
tech.
not familiar with this, and I'll say some other people I know in tech in New York
Yeah.
were not familiar with this, so it's always really interesting to me, even as someone who sort of works in tech right now, that
Mhm, mhm,
there's still a lot of that divide. I think it's interesting too what you said about storytelling, because if you look at LinkedIn right now, there are so many sort of storytelling, content marketer type
mhm,
jobs available at companies like
mhm,
Anthropic and OpenAI. I think the first time I've seen it, like an influencer marketing director post
mhm. Yeah.
LinkedIn listing at Anthropic. So I totally agree with you. I think there's this race to really define it. It's been interesting to watch the tech companies sort of define themselves in different ways. Again, specifically Anthropic, I find it really
Mhm,
interesting how they've sort of tried to make themselves the like literary highbrow tech. Like they
mhm,
had this big like pop up in New York that I'm sure that
mhm.
you have chatted
That we
about at
did talk
some
about.
yeah, I was gonna say this seems
Yes.
like a really good topic for your show, but really
Yeah.
trying to, like, appeal to this more,
Yeah.
highbrow literary world, and so it's interesting to see, all these companies really fighting to have the storytelling. They're hiring, like,
Yeah.
content directors that pay, like, $300,000 a year. It's
Mhm,
it's
mhm.
interesting.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that also, pairs to the other point that I was trying to make here about, um this New Yorker profile that came out where it's like
Mhm.
we have actual journalists that are still able to do their job, and still able to come out with these huge, almost damning profiles, depending on which side you're on, right? About
Yeah.
Sam Altman and like who he is. Basically, what I understood
Mhm.
from the piece was we're all talking about how AI is going to become this like major influence both in tech but in the political world as well. We're seeing them start to lobby and to like build packs so
Oh,
that they
yeah.
can lobby the politicians, right? And the main premise of why OpenAI decided to go the nonprofit route to start was because they knew that they needed to bring people on board. And Sam Altman was chosen as the person
Yeah.
to like lead this charge because of his past and his brilliance, his connections and all this stuff. What this article spoke to I thought was like, is this the person that we want to trust to be the figurehead for AI and everything that's going to come from it? Is this a person that we're going to believe, like his integrity, his character? And like, if that's the case, let's look at his background and everything he's done, the way that he's
Mhm.
climbed his way to the top. And I think Farrow did like a good job of portraying I wouldn't say completely impartial, but we should be having these conversations, right? And I think that's where journalism is going to come into play and like what they should focus on going forward. And then yes, we'll continue to have these like spokesperson semi-propaganda shows that
Yeah.
put out like the other like feel good stories that like we do need. I do think we do need that. Especially like even within like the celebrity world. Like I think like why are we having journalists give gotcha questions to celebrities? I don't think that that needs to be the purview of every conversation that they're having when they're on doing a movie promo?
To me, what's really interesting is so much of the reporting that came out in the Ronan Farrow story is included in Karen Wa's book,
Mhm,
Empire of AI,
mhm,
which is amazing. And I would recommend that anyone read it in some format. I think I listened to it. The audiobook was great.
mhm.
And yeah, I mean, Sam Altman's entire thing is like that this man is a pathological liar. And I find it really interesting to see people react to this. Like, yes, if you're up on the story and you know everything, like there's certainly new reporting in the Ronan story, but we
Mhm.
already know that this guy has a really fishy relationship with the truth. I know people get very excited when Ronan has a story out, and yeah, and I guess maybe I'm like almost too jaded to it at this point where I'm like, of course they're doing all of
Mm,
this.
yeah, but you do bring up an interesting point about, that Ronan Farrow's usually not the first person, but by the time he comes around to the story, it's like, okay, we are ready for the wider
It's a
audience
tipping
to
point.
know,
Yeah,
the stories that, most insiders that have worked in Silicon Valley, know,
totally.
right? Awesome. Okay. So lessons here for me are figure out your narrative and how it fits into things, right? Telling those stories in a way that's relatable, whether, relying on a customer like case study to like, talk about what you're actually building instead of just kind of, announcing a latest like product release, right? Like how are you putting it in the context of like the
Mhm.
people that you're trying to go after? Actually, that's probably the through line from this whole episode. Because really
Yeah.
anything with the politicians, right? Like that was the same thing here too.
Yeah, and I think my lesson would be almost on the flip side of it, which is I think Ronan's someone who does a really amazing job of short form video and also Twitter and really all the social media. I'm really hesitant to get on TikTok personally, but I like honestly take a lot of inspiration and advice from someone like Ronan Farrow,
Mhm.
who is able to take 10,000 words and distill it down to a couple of videos and some tweets and really get buzz for their articles,
Yeah.
in a way that, like, I feel intimidated doing that for, like, a 2,000 word feature.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really, like, proof that you can break down a message no matter how complex it is, whether it's
Mhm.
universal childcare, to bring it back to our first topic,
Yeah.
or, a huge, huge expose on OpenAI and Sam Altman, that there's ways to do that and to have, like, your highbrow, like, it's in the New Yorker for the people who are
Mhm.
gonna read it there, but the same information can be distilled down for people who aren't going to engage with it in that medium.
I love that. That's such a good point. Just to piggyback on that is this whole idea of um repurposing content, right? It's like here you
Mhm.
have the 10,000, word white paper, right? That,
Yep.
we've done for like our marketing and, research and blah blah blah. But then how do you make that into a blog post and then a newsletter and then video form content and then social content?
Mhm.
Um and it's all like one whole thing to get as much attention as you can at the time that you're like, putting it out there.
The other topic I brought today to talk about was the drama. So this is the A24 movie that just came out with Zendaya and Robert Pattinson as the leads. And this movie has really been everywhere for a little while. So I think this is a great example of something that did a big lead up. We saw a lot of teasing of this, lots of sort of things that would be in anyone's wedding. So like a save the date and like a little like Polaroid images of them, really making it look real for all
Mhm,
extents and purposes, feeling like we were all invited to the wedding. And so this past week and a half, we've been on the press tour, like with this
mhm,
cast. And so I think what's so interesting is that this press tour with A24 has been taking place at the same time as Zendaya herself just got married to Tom Holland, her former co-star, like colleague, her
yeah, right.
former co-star in
I mean, they're still
Spider-Man.
co-stars,
Yeah,
right?
they are colleagues on Spider-Man, and there's obviously so much interest. People have such parasocial relationships with this
Mhm,
couple, and they are extremely private historically. And so it's been so interesting to we know that the couple just got married. La Roche, I'm sure, intentionally dropped that little, bug on one of the red carpets for award season. We know they just got married, but we have seen no pictures of that wedding. We know nothing about it. It's probably going to stay that way. And at
mhm,
the same time, we've been seeing Zendaya do all these wedding things. So she showed up to a bridal appointment, showed up to a chapel in Vegas to watch people get married. She's been wearing something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue, of course, in collaboration with her stylist, La
mhm.
Roche, doing all of these like different looks that hit the categories. There was a Vogue wedding spread as if like it was a real wedding that happened. And so it's really been this like all immersive press experience. And the two things I find the most interesting are one, just Zendaya being as private as she is, and all of this happening at the same time as her actual wedding. So we're sort of doing the wedding season with her,
Mhm.
but it's actually all fake, which is
Mhm.
so her and
Yeah.
feels really on brand for Zendaya in like a great way. Like she's giving us a little bit,
Mhm.
but it's not actually the things she doesn't want to give away.
Mhm.
And then also just the question of, is this what movies have to do now? Like original movies. This does not come with a built-in audience besides the
Mhm.
fans of the actors. This is original, IP. This isn't an adaptation of a buzzy book or a comic book or a remake.
Mhm.
Is this what movies have to do now to get people to the theater?
Yes.
Yes, short answer.
Yes, short answer. So I think the biggest thing here is this is another A24 movie who, which we just saw go full, balls deep with Marty Supreme and Timothy Chalamet, doing that whole press run. And I think the biggest lesson that A24 kind of took from that is yes, our celebrities are going to do the, normal press tour that they do, go to the different, movie premieres in like the major cities, but also, let's get them doing, stuff that goes beyond that, right? It's like A24 had to go to these like, publications and be like, "Hey, we want to do this thing, this marketing thing. Do you want to do it?" And it's, I'm sure it's an easy yes because it's like, "Oh, Zendaya and Robert Pattinson pretend they're married on like a Vogue shoot. Like, of course we're going to do that."
Oh, yeah.
And like the thing that I like about it is that A24 is like it's a small studio, right? Compared to WB and like
Yeah.
Paramount, all these like major studios, even compared to Netflix, who could potentially be doing more to like market their films, but kind of just rely on people being on the platform and using that as like a marketing,
Mhm.
marketing system. One thing that I want to call out is that I really enjoyed that throughout this, like, press run that, like, Zendaya and Robert Pattinson still come off as, like, um, we are working in this film together and
They're
we're
like
promoting it.
bros.
Yeah, exactly. We're like, brother, sister, and
Mhm.
not like the Margot Robbie, and
Right.
like Jacob Elordi or even Liam Nielsen and Pamela Anderson who
Oh,
pretended to
yeah.
have a relationship
Was that fake?
yes, it came out like afterwards, them saying like, "Oh, it was a fake relationship,
Wait,
that
that
we,
makes me really sad.
I know, right? And I'm like,
Oh,
why
I
does
don't
it
like
have to
that.
be like that fake versus like this fake where it
Yeah.
still felt like wholesome and like happy?
Do you almost feel like everything has to be sort of immersive right now? Like,
I
it's
think
like
that's
they
the thing right now.
created this, like, very immersive
Mhm.
experience for what is a drama, like just a
Mhm,
a
mhm.
movie. Like it's,
Yeah.
we have like Netflix House, like they're making these immersive
Mhm, mhm.
experiences. We have, Airbnb having
Right.
like letting us go to the cottage for,
Right, right, right.
heated rivalry. And it's like their
Mhm.
version of an immersive experience was a Boston Globe thing and
Yeah.
a wedding announcement and all of
Mhm.
that. And it's like, yeah, like movies have to, not to get us too fast at the lesson, but it's like,
Yeah.
how can any of these entertainment properties make immersive experiences? Because that's like kind of what you need to go viral right now.
Yes, I think that's kind of where we're at. I mean, we're seeing pop-ups, right? Like you mentioned the
Yeah.
Anthropic Claude,
Oh
pop-up
God.
in New
Yeah.
York. Like there's so many pop-ups happening in New York. There's ones that happen here in LA. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's just like the buzzy thing right now is like what are these immersive experiences that we can, get people in on. The other things is like it doesn't even have to be fully immersive. I mean, one of the examples that we called out here was for the for Final Destination on the 405, there were like those log, trucks that had like
What?
the billboard on the side saying like, Final Destination
Okay.
movie
I'd
coming
like
up.
to be left out of that experience. Like, did not
um,
consent.
but it's all these like references, right? And Easter eggs
Yeah.
that like real fans know.
Yes.
So it's like, how do you create that? Additional buzz to get like your biggest fans to go out and be online, searching these things.
Definitely.
Because if you also think about it, people commenting on the marketing has become its own type of marketing, right?
Hmm.
We talk about here on the podcast as like examples, that's marketing, right? Like people, going viral on Twitter talking about like these examples are also, marketing. So it's
Yep.
like all these things like yes, we have like the stars to promote the movie, but now we can get like the fans of the stars and then the fans of like the directors and like the fans of like the movie to become marketing mouthpieces for us if we make the
Definitely.
marketing interesting enough. So that's a lesson here for me is like, how are
Yeah.
you making your marketing so interesting that like your, number one fans want to talk about it? And not like here we're
Mhm.
promoting the product, but it's like here we're like, this is
No,
how the company made me feel. This is what the product did for me. Like, getting
people
that,
loved it. I saw
right,
such
exactly.
positive responses to the
Hmm.
little things that came out around
Yeah.
this. Like, people want this stuff.
Exactly. Take heed, marketers. Like, what is it that
Yeah,
you're doing to kind of create that type of marketing? And obviously, fine, you don't have a celebrity to like, be out there promoting it for you, but
sure.
there are ways that you can make your users feel as if you're listening to them and
Mhm.
acknowledging them in a way that gets them to create that content for you.
Definitely.
So takeaways overall, I think, the major through line here is like, how are you creating the type of content that will get your user to pay
Mhm.
attention to you, right? And I think there's a lot more that marketers can be doing to be immersive, bring, your user to like where you're at, and then also to create content for them that they understand, and then also repurposing that content in a way that reaches them in different avenues, right? Like this was like such an overarching campaign that like I saw things on Twitter and engaged with it there. I saw things on Instagram and engaged with it there. I saw things on TikTok, right? Like, and
Yep.
each one didn't feel as if like, oh, it's the same thing I've already seen. It was like enough different content that like each thing felt like a new engagement and a new way for me to like learn about the movie or like, the politician or, whatever. And then the last thing I'll say is like that, legitimacy versus like fun. Type content, right? It's like, Zohran Mamdani is still doing the press conferences that are like the, legit stayed, stodgy, like boring political stuff that has to happen, but doing like the fun TikTok videos to also explain what he's doing. I think that that's what OpenAI is going to be doing, right? It's like they'll
Mhm.
still do like
Yeah.
their blog post and Sam Altman going on to like, doing interviews, but now they have the TBPN guys to be like a mouthpiece to talk about those like fun stories
Mhm.
about AI and tech companies and startups in Silicon Valley that like people want to hear about, like that optimism that not everything is AI is going to come and like steal your jobs, but like AI can help you do, fun things, but not write the book for you.
Yeah, definitely not.
Cool. And do you have any takeaways?
Yeah, I think in general, what you said around understanding your audience and your format. And again, it's so hard. I understand like we're all dealing with like fewer budgets, fewer people, all of that, but it really is a little bit of like diversification and doing it all. And so I
Hmm.
think that's, if you take it from someone like Zoran, it's understanding that he needed the video strategy and to go to people like, and to do the debates and to be the serious candidate. Like,
Hmm.
it's not like you get either or at
Yeah.
this point. And so I think we see it with something like OpenAI too, where it's like they are diversifying. They're diversifying the groups that are going to be talking to them by getting into the media.
Yeah.
And it's not that all the other stuff they're doing isn't important, but it's understanding that you have to reach people in the mediums that they're at. And so really making sure, as you said, like trying to make your content work super hard for you and understand the different formatting, but again really just changing that strategy and making sure that it stays true to your brand.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sophie. Where can people find you?
People can find me on Twitter. Vershbow, Vershbow is my handle, basically everywhere: Twitter, Instagram, and yeah, see you on the internet.
Awesome. And then you can follow me at Sonu Bashez everywhere and the podcast at Meme Team Pod on YouTube and Meme Team Podcast on Spotify and TikTok. Thank you. Bye.
Great.